Well, hello. Welcome to season 2, episode 1, aka episode 16 of the Marketing for What Matters podcast. I'm Jam at Peaceful Media, and I'm joined by some esteemed guests today. Ali Gannett. Did I say that correctly?
Gannett, but it's okay. Yeah.
Yeah, dang it. Okay, I did not remember that from our interview session. Gannett. I think he even gave me a rhymer during our
Gannett, damn it.
Gannett, damn it. And I didn't even want to say that. Said it, so now I can. And one of my colleagues here at Peaceful Media who helps us with all things Google traffic, Jen Davis. So we are, this is a new segment in season 2 where we double click or create a little breakout session to dive into marketing technique or tactic or strategy that will help other organizations like World Forestry Center expand their reach, gain audience, and ideally increase their revenue. And in the nonprofit space, aka donations and contributions. And it came to be in our conversation, it came to light that World Forestry Center wasn't really fully utilizing the free ad dollars that Google grants nonprofits every month, around $10,000 if you can spend it. There's some asterisks there. They'll give nonprofits up to $10,000 per month to go and spend on search traffic. So in other words, keywords or phrases that people are searching for that may be aligned with what you offer, what you're contributing to the world. And so it's not easy to spend that 10,000. There's some there's some nuance to this whole thing. It's not like, woohoo, 120K, let's go spend that money this year. That would be nice. It's actually quite challenging to spend the full allotment of Google grant money. However, it's not our first rodeo with this. Peaceful Media grew up driving traffic for nonprofits from Google. So I'm very excited to bring in Jen Davis, our top Google traffic specialist here at Peaceful Media, to help Ali Gannett, damn it, and World Forestry Center get some more eyeballs on things that matter to their organization. I'm going to be pretty quiet here. I'm just going to sit back and listen to the experts. And without further ado, Jen Davis, why don't you take it from here?
Yeah, why don't we, because you mentioned it, Jam, the whole Google ads for nonprofits, there are some restrictions that we have. It is 10,000. It can be tough to spend that. Some of it can depend on geo-targeting and things like that. But there's also certain things that we cannot do on the account. We, for instance, cannot use a keyword that is a single keyword. So, donation, for instance, it has to be, something specific about that donation. We technically, the rule is you can't bid above $2 on a keyword. However, that is it's still a rule if you are doing manual CPC, but we use bidding algorithms like maximize clicks, maximize conversions, target impression share, and each one has their own their own reason for doing it. Target impression share is going to be for awareness. Clicks for traffic, conversions, obviously for conversions. And when we're using one of those smart bidding algorithms, the system will actually bid higher than $2 now, which is what we, of course, want to focus on because we are going against potentially people, even nonprofits that might have paid accounts in addition to their nonprofit account. The other thing we need to do is make sure that our click-through rate is above 5% every month. And usually that's not an issue. The one thing that I do recommend is that we do run a brand campaign so that can keep that higher and we don't ever run into that issue is generally what we're going to do. But we can keep that brand, at a lower spend, but keep our click-through rate up. Those are the 3 things that we kind of look at. And in those restrictions to see how successful it can be in spending $10,000. We just some of it just depends too on search volume. So that's the other component to it. But we will see what we can push. So Ellie, before we jump in, I think if you could kind of just give us an overview of the organization, and that can help us kind of go into the next part of the conversation, which is going to be, what are we trying to achieve?
Yeah, sure. So we're a nonprofit 501c3. we've been around. We were incorporated back in, or we were established back in the 60s, mid 60s, and we have a mission of creating and inspiring champions of sustainable forestry. And we do that through the events that we host, experiences, and exhibits in our museum. We have a museum that is open to the public Wednesday through Sundays from 10 a.m., which is a new hour, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. It's located in Washington Park here in Portland, Oregon. It's called the Discovery Museum, and we have permanent exhibits that really explore the ecology and the uses and management of forests, primarily in the Pacific Northwest on the first floor, and then upstairs is how forests are managed around the world. And then we also have a art gallery that features rotating art exhibits that are up usually about 4 months or so. We're due 2 a year, and that's been able to provide a new entry point for people into the forestry conversation. And then we also have a prototype lab that's going on right now that we're really testing content for future exhibit development, really exploring how forests have always been a part of humanity, and that by doing any sort of relationship with forest is some form of forest management, whether that is actively managing or not actively managing a forest. And that's been around as long as humans have been on the earth and interacting with forests. So that's been really interesting. We do focus groups. We are engaging the public as they come through, and really helping to shape the future of our organization and especially our public facing. We also do conferences, and we have a conference for professionals within the forest investment world. And that is everything from people who own forests, people who manage investment firms for that have some part into forests. So everything from larger investments to also public, your own 401k might actually be tied to owning within forest management. So we have a conference once a year that's called Canopy, and it's hosted here. And we really explore kind of changing in markets, changing in the most recent years have been more focused on carbon and climate, and really looking at advancements in both technology and also in opportunities for investments and also owners. And then we also do community events. So we have free days at our museum that we offer for folks. We have kind of family friendly craft events, things like that. We do artist talks, and we're also kicking off in 2025 a forest pub night with McMenamins in a partnership. So that's really exciting. That'll be monthly. And then we're also we have a fellowship program that is a 2-year program that works with individuals across 10 different sectors, everything from publishing to public health and the energy sector and real estate, all coming together to learn. Right now, it's all about wildfire. So learning about kind of the science, the policy, the practices, both Western or both like government practices, individual practices, indigenous practices around wildfire prevention, and wildfire prevention. And then working together with those fellows to create their own action plan within their sector. So this is another opportunity to get people who would never think about their relationship professionally or personally with forests or or wildfires to really engage that, so that we can show that our issues with forests affect all aspects of society. And then finally, we are an event rental space, a venue space, which is a large driving of a lot of our uh, finances too, which is people from Portland or around the world will come and host their event with us. We do everything from weddings, bar and bat mitzvahs, conferences, fundraisers, proms, you name it, we've probably hosted it. And that's been a really interesting way to kind of open our campus up to the community and bring people who have probably never thought about coming onto our campus, which for me is an opportunity to then engage them deeper in forestry conversation. So all of that, those are kind of our tentacles that we work with. And all of it is around kind of getting people to think differently about forests than they ever have before, and to have awareness of that, of how forests are managed impact the health of our societies, in order to then empower the public to engage in action for our forests. So whether that's through supporting of policies that are beneficial to the sustainability of our forests, or financially, or however that can act out. So yeah, to build that public will to act. So that's our nutshell.
So a lot going on.
Yeah.
So let's talk about, kind of the goals that we want to achieve. We've got, obviously, you mentioned just the mission of the organization, but, events, your museum, you do the art gallery, you've got the prototype lab, you've got conferences, you have community events, the fellowship, event rental, all things that we can, to some degree, advertise, right? Mm-hmm. And we can get very specific. I'm talking about the museum. We can talk about, very specific parts of that, or we can also, family events, for instance, particularly for those within the area. So if we think about kind of the things that we want to advertise and the goals for this campaign, what would be your priority? Is it donations? Is it getting more people to the museum, more rentals, those types of things?
Yeah, I think rentals would be are one of the highest priorities, because one rental can bring in a significant amount of money compared to any number, can be compared to an entire month of attendance at our museum. So that would be a big priority, because that is a large revenue driver. The other would be the museum and attendance, and kind of putting us back on the map within Portland. We were closed for 2 years during COVID. And then for the next 2 years, we're residual of people being like, oh, I didn't realize you guys were still open, or you guys opened. So I think that is part of just driving people onto our campus. I'm a firm believer in, when you invite people, then that's the opportunity to have them go deeper. And so our museum is also one of the cheapest options for families. Our admission is $0 for kids under 3, $5 for youth, $7 for seniors, and $8 for adults. And then we also have a membership program, which is $60 for a whole year and gets that's 2 adults and up to 4 youth. So it's a great option for families who might not have the budget to spend every week going to some place that could easily spend over $60 in just one trip. And so that's something that I think we could really leverage, is that we are an affordable option for families, especially here in Pacific Northwest, where it's nice and dreary during the winter. Just thinking of kind of immediate stuff too. We're a great option for cold, rainy days because we're indoors. Those are the two kind of main, because I think that those, for me, I see an immediate kind of ROI that we can track. Mm-hmm. The conference that we host, we kind of have that already locked in with our internal audience. And same with the fellowship program. So those two, I think, are more kind of, once people are interested in learning more about our organization, those are things that we can highlight. But I don't necessarily think that those are, to the general public, the hooks that I think are worth putting for the marketing component. And then overall, just the general branding of our organization, we're kind of entering next year. At the beginning of next year, we're going to look at what does a messaging refresh look like. So not necessarily a full branding refresh, but how we talk about our work. And so that's interesting to see how that could come about. But I've had good success with just helping people say, like, yeah, we're helping people change the way they see forests. Another tagline that we use a lot is where people in forests meet. So yeah, those would probably be the three, the branding, kind of what you had mentioned, and then driving people to rent our campus and to come to our museum.
Okay. So let's talk. It looks like on the rentals, we have a form that people can fill out if they're interested in inquiring about that. I'm assuming you might get some phone calls about it as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Would you say more forms than phone calls for rentals?
I would think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then let's focus on rentals for a second.
Sure.
And obviously, people within the area. But how many of those rentals are coming from outside even the Portland area or even outside of Washington State? Is it all US based? Is it even international?
I think it's mostly local. It's mostly Pacific Northwest. The one area that we're really trying to maybe break through into is people who plan conferences. Like if they're needing an like a off-site happy hour or an off-site excursion, that we can do that. So our museum could be rented, for example, if a large conference that's coming to the Portland Convention Center, they need something kind of unique. A big highlight is that we're directly across from a TriMet station. So we're extremely easy to get to by public transit. And so that I'm hoping kind of to break through into people who plan conferences with the convention center, but then also weddings are a big one. We're a great spot option for corporate retreats. Our tagline within rentals is kind of like, it is like rethink the conference room, meet in nature. That's a big thing, is that when you rent with us, you're in beautiful wooden interiors surrounded by trees. Jam, you've been on our campus. It's, the Washington Park, which is the tip of Forest Park, is right around us all the time. So I think that's been kind of our hook too. But yeah, local, not necessarily international, but then trying to break through to being like a unique option for conferences.
Okay. And that's great because we can, to your point, the rethink the conference room, meet in nature, those are things that we can use an ad copy, for instance, to kind of draw people in. And the other thing too is like we can go after keywords like wedding event space, corporate retreat space, those types of things. So even like happy hour space or something for those conference planners, for instance. The other thing we can do too, from a geo-targeting perspective, is, we can do like a mile radius around the Portland area. We can even go out a little bit more into like state, but we actually will append the word Portland, for instance, to some of these keywords. And so if I'm in Chicago, if I search, I decide I want to get married, even though again, maybe, I don't know. And I want to do it in Portland. If I'm putting something in like wedding event space Portland, I'm showing intent. So I will see the ad in Chicago, even though we're not technically geo-targeting that area.
great.
We'll turn on the geo-targeting so that it's anybody who's showing intent of the Portland area can then see the ad as well.
Oh,
so
that's
you
great.
may still get people from outside of the Portland area who but are interested in coming to that area as well. Okay. Um, so from a rental perspective, with forms and or phone calls, easily trackable, as far as what's coming actually from Google Ads, for instance, so we can see how many leads we're getting in, potentially then are those leads turning into actual rentals, for instance. We can even put a dollar amount to those, of those that are turning into those rentals, just to see what your return on, what we're spending in that area, which can be helpful then, depending on what we're doing as far as, we've got museum, brand awareness, rentals. If that's becoming where we're getting so many of these rentals in, we can put more budget to that if that's, fueling more than perhaps the museum or something like that. Okay. So let's talk about the museum because, correct me if I'm wrong, but it looks like this is obviously foot traffic is what I call it. It doesn't look like you can buy a membership or tickets online. So this is all going to be at the actual museum. Yep. So this is going to be foot traffic. Okay. So currently, are you doing anything where you're counting the number of people you have, or I'm assuming ticket sales is what's telling you how many people you have on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, right?
Correct.
Okay, so we can look for a lift there. By any chance, are you asking people like how they heard about you when they're purchasing either those tickets or that membership?
I think so. It's kind of if it comes up with the conversation with our front desk staff, but I've never had like a full training with them about it. I know when I'm standing there, I'm constantly asking how people, especially when we've done events, because I'm looking at a market like I want to make sure I'm putting my efforts where it is. So I think that they have, but I don't know if they've really been tracking it. But that's something that I think we could establish.
Yeah, that would be great. And the issue that we always have is, when we're dealing with foot traffic, we don't have like a clear straight line from saw it online to foot traffic, buying a ticket or a membership, for instance. So we look for that dotted line. And of course, some people are not going to understand that they clicked on an ad versus an organic listing, for instance. Mm-hmm. So you might just hear Google and it might be organic. But I just want to get a note. What we want to see is, and that's something I would start like today so that when we launch campaigns, we can see if there's actually an uptick in either somebody saying Google or just foot traffic in general. And that'll kind of give us an indication that we are actually driving people there. Mm-hmm. Do you have any sense of, for instance, we talked about, affordable option for families, great for cold, rainy days. Do you have a sense of how many people are like making this decision day of to visit versus that are planning it out? Like, if I'm looking at, well, geez, what are we going to do with the kids this weekend? Am I starting to do that planning now, or am I doing it on a Saturday or Sunday that might be cold and rainy and I need an inside option? Any sense of timing wise?
Well, I definitely think because our museum is open Wednesday through Sunday, that Mondays and Tuesdays are just like no one's really probably thinking of us. I think that the Monday through Friday, apart from school trips that we work closely with the school system about, we get a lot of kind of out of towners who may be staying in a hotel downtown and coming up for to visit. Then the weekend is way more of that local crowd, parents maybe thinking about what they're doing that Friday night, looking at the weather. It's too cold and rainy to go to the zoo. What could we do? I still want to get my kid out of the house. I do know that when we've had some craft days, and when I've asked people like, how did you hear about it? When did you? They said, we looked up. There's a really active online presence here called PDX Parent. They've been one of our larger drivers for just their free calendar listing. Some of the people are like, oh, I looked up there this morning to figure out what I wanted to do. So I think it's a mixture of the kind of Friday, we're going into the weekend, what are we going to do with the kids, and day of. Our hours are 10 to 4, so we still, we have that kind of earlier morning people before we open. that people can kind of take a look and then make their plans.
Okay, because one of the reason why I ask is there is actually an AdWords script. It's actually, so there's scripts that you can use, other people create, but AdWords actually, or Google Ads, I should say, I keep calling it AdWords and so like our AdWords. Google created a script years ago when they first introduced scripts that allows you to kind of adjust things based on weather. It was originally intended for, think hotels around a major airport when it snows or rains and the airport is closed down. Hotels want to book you, and so they would, the system automatically, based on forecasts from the weather system, as well as it actually does airport closings as well. It can read that information via an API and then adjust your budgets within the campaigns to have a higher budget when, in your case, kind of cold and rainy, for instance.
Yeah.
So that is something I can take a look at to see, particularly on a Saturday or Sunday, if we can utilize that and how we utilize that to grab a little bit more traffic on those days that potentially, is a great option for you, more so than maybe the zoo on a sunny, nice day, for instance.
That is amazing to really utilize. Also, that's terrifying how technology works. And now I'm like, wow, that would make sense as to why Target appears when it's like mid-afternoon. Yes. And so I think that would be that I could see that really working in our favor, because that is a big driver. Rainy day. We love rainy days. We love a rainy summer day. So yeah, that would be huge.
Great. All right. And then, we're just, we'll look for kind of foot traffic, ticket sales, even membership sales. And again, if you can be asking, that would be great. All right, let's
I'm sorry, we have one more thing. So I haven't launched it yet on our website. Also, our website, this is something too that I think as we move on, like there's some cleanup within our website that is ongoing project. So some things that, especially like the rentals page, is a little rough to find. So trying to figure out the best way to integrate Google Ad and Click with our website refresh, kind of more back end stuff that we're utilizing, and also keywords, targeting, SEO, that sort of stuff. But one thing with the museum is we do have a little forest store it's a gift shop, but we call it the forest store. And so that has everything from like stuffed animals that are very, very reasonably priced, mugs, local things, books, things like that. So that I'm finalizing that page, but it's also come in. We don't have the online, we don't have e-commerce. But people could call, and if they're in Oregon, we can ship within Oregon. But yeah, so that's something, but really driving people back onto our campus is big, especially for like holiday season with that.
Sure. Okay, great. All right, let's talk about branding and awareness. And now here we have probably a plethora of opportunity, because it doesn't have to just be Portland, right? We want to get this message out to anybody. I'm assuming we can start with the U.S. I mean, that's not to say that we couldn't go internationally, but obviously starting with the U.S. since, one, that's where you're based and a focus and things like that. So from awareness perspective, what do you think the message is? Is it more about the mission and vision of the organization? What is the message you want to get out to people?
Yeah, I think there's a couple, and I kind of think more in those like tagline missions that we're really looking at is that forest issues are human issues. That's a big one, that the way our forests are managed impact our society. I think a big focus with that too is highlighting within around wildfire. So that kind of wildfire, the catastrophic wildfires that we're seeing right now is an effect of poor forest management. And so that in order to have a healthy, sustainable future, we need to have concrete understanding of what forest management is. And for us, that is a mixture of mechanical thinning and prescribed or cultural burning, depending on the location. And that kind of equation equals a resilient forest. And that's kind of what we're after. So really, really highlighting that that humans and forests are interconnected, I think is a huge, huge thing. And it's a little different than I think a lot of other kind of forest specific organizations. They might go really, really hard on just conservation or just enjoying nature, just doing or just the forest management part of it. But really we're trying to see like that people in the city are seeing the effects of forests managed far away from them. Like take the wildfires in like New York and New Jersey right now, which is not a common place for wildfires to happen. So I think that that's a really big one is that kind of like underlying, forests. We want to make forests and forest issues a public awareness issue and concern. Sort of like, we've compared it internally as we kind of looked at strategy. It's like, how did seatbelts become, really mainstream within society, right? A societal issue of seatbelts and safety, or the straws and turtles and recycling and all of that. And so getting forests and that kind of societal priority realm is something that we're really striving to. Because another one of our taglines is that when society and forests are in balance, both flourish. And when they are not in balance, both suffer.
Is there anything with the branding and awareness? Is there any action you want people to take? Are you looking for donations? Are you looking for, anything else for them to take action on, or is it just knowledge?
I think as a nonprofit, we're always the donation part. I think also the invitation to learn more and finding their entry point, whether that's coming back into our page, learning about, we've had virtual programming. So I think the action is really come participate. And that by participating, you become more intimate with the issues at hand, and then we'll be able to take action. So if there is a policy that needs a public vote, people are aware of it and aware of the issues and the context for it.
Is there anything else that you feel is important that I didn't ask, or that you want to make sure that we're either advertising or messaging out to them?
No, I think that those are kind of the three main areas that make the most sense for something like this. People going into Google, for myself, which I'm a mom of a toddler, like I go to Google to like, what am I going to do with my kid this weekend? Or I'm planning an event that where can I go that's unique? Or, I love forests. So what's something more about forests that's an invitation to go a little deeper?
Even adjacent things like kids hiking, kid-friendly hiking near Portland.
Mm-hmm.
It is also something like you think about Google Maps, or this any parents looking for outdoor activities, outdoor school, like anything with regards to adventures in wilderness or outdoors. This is the easy button at World Forestry Center.
Yeah, we're great. We're a great option for people who are doing homeschooling too. Mm-hmm. To come, a family who does homeschooling for $60 for a whole year, building in, learning about, just taking apart, even, we have so many different little sections of our museum that they could explore. So homeschooling, forest schooling, that's a big area too.
Yeah, even homeschool field trips, right?
Yep. Yeah, exactly that. Or camps. Like I know we have a film camp that rents our space. So people who are looking to rent space for camps, um, that's also an option that I'm sure our events team and a facilities team would love.
Sure. Okay, let's talk about next steps, just so you know kind of how the process goes. This has all been great info because we obviously want to be focused. And, the thing is, we're going to start with these three, rentals, museum, branding, and awareness. But that's not to say that we couldn't, start to bring in more about the fellowship if we wanted to and those types of things. Part of it is we'll see how much we're spending as well. But I think we have a good mix that it'll be, rentals and museum a little bit more local focus, but still have the opportunity from the outside of that area. And then branding and awareness, across the U.S. at least to start. So what I do now is I go back and I work with Google and a few tools to give me some ideas on keywords. So, things that I will put in is, like wedding space rental, for instance. And that'll come back with variations, and we'll get into, there's kind of those generic words like, again, wedding space rental, but then we can get into pool wedding space rental or outdoors wedding space rentals, those types of things. So I come up with a whole list of keywords. I bucket them into categories. So for instance, when we're talking about rentals, we'll have something for weddings, we'll have something for corporate retreats, those types of things. That way, because at the same time, I'm going to take those keywords and then I'm also going to create ad copy. Now, the ad copy is going to be a mix of some of those keywords that we're bidding on. That is something that Google wants. When we do that, it gives us a higher strength and ad rank strength. And the higher the strength, the lower our cost per click. Usually the higher the click-through rate is. So it's a combination of some branding, obviously the organization name and things about it. We'll use some of your kind of taglines where we can as well. And then the keywords that we're bidding on, and then call to actions, for rentals, get a quote, for instance, something like that. So it's kind of a combination of things. And what I do is I create basically a spreadsheet of all of these keywords into categories and the ad copy that goes with it. And then I share that with you and say, okay, what do you think about this? And we go through if there's a keyword or, a couple keywords that just don't make sense, as I'm describing a rental, the rentals area and things like that, any corrections on that. Anything you want to add, something that I didn't think of, certainly can do that from a keyword perspective. If there's anything that we want to highlight in the ad copy that I haven't mentioned, for instance, we can certainly do that. We just have to stay within our character counts. And then once we get the sign off on that, then it's all a matter of getting it into the accounts and pressing the go button.
Wow. All right. Now that sounds exciting. I definitely am in that category of I don't have $10,000 a month. So what is that within the next step looking at, like, do we set money, like the budget for it, or does it just kind of do its own thing? How does that work? That's one area that I'm not sure, because I'm the most familiar with the way that like Facebook ad and Meta ads do, where it's like, I got $10, go use that as best you can. But is Google's almost the opposite, right? Or how does that work?
Yeah, so some of it is, first of all, I'm going to get a sense when I pull the keywords, it's going to give me some search volume behind it, how much, because some of it has to do with competitors too, how many competitors are in the space. We'll also look at it from a geo perspective, for that volume. And it's going to spit out some numbers at me as to, this is what it typically sees as an average cost per click. This is what it typically sees as a click-through rate. And that ultimately gets to a budget number, for instance. Okay. So we may look at this and say, okay, rentals, there's a lot more search volume. There's a lot more opportunity here. We need to put X amount there versus museum, maybe not as much. I'm obviously making up something, for instance. I'm not sure until I look it up, for instance. And that way we know kind of we can put more money to rentals versus museum or vice versa. Google's going to spit out a lot of numbers at me when I put this all together. So I can come up with an idea of where we should be spending the money and how much we should be doing. Yeah. I will tell you, like branding and awareness, it's going to be I think, going to be a little tricky in the beginning, just because I think there's lots of searchable things with it. But honing in on those keywords is going to take a little bit. It's very wedding space rental is very easy. Kid activities, museum, very easy. Bringing an awareness about how we need to make sure that it's that we're in harmony with forests and things like that. We're going to get a little creative there and see how we go. So that might not be a high spender initially, but we can certainly work our way up to that. The other thing typically is what I see is that no matter what account it is, paid, a nonprofit, it is generally going to take 30 days to kind of ramp things up and see how they're working. And, my forecast may tell me right now that rentals is where it is, but we may in the account see that museum is it based on, not only search volume, but how people are reacting to things as well. So some of it is a little bit trial by error.
Yeah, that's great. Especially because we're going into our financial year is calendar year. So kind of getting an idea of like, what is my Google ad bucket that I need to reserve within my marketing campaign, marketing budget. So that's helpful because, just knowing, if you came back and it's like, well, it's $5,000 a month, I'd be like, that's not happening for me. But $300 a month, we could be talking, so. And understanding that kind of risk and reward with the lower budget for a nonprofit.
And just to reiterate, Ali, you understand that this is granted to you. This is a budget that's granted to you by Google through the Google Grants program.
I thought it was a match.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought they matched up to 10,000.
No.
Oh.
As long as we meet those thresholds of click-through rate.
Oh, okay. Well, that's even better.
Reiterate those thresholds are to maintain that budget.
Oh.
Yeah, that's the click-through rate of 5% or more. We can't bid on single keyword phrases. And again, if we were doing manual CPC, which we won't be doing, we can't bid over $2. But we'll be using algorithmic bidding, so that is a non-issue these days.
Okay, well then I absolutely misread that because I thought it was up to 10,000 as a match. So like I would put in, oh my gosh, that's even better news.
Yeah. This is really, you're going to be the hero of your marketing.
Honestly, that's what I'm trying to say.
Marketing and planning conversation for 2025 is see where we can get this dialed in. And I will stress this again for other nonprofit organizations and NGOs that are listening to this episode. It's a challenging to get a 5% click-through rate. We tend to think of very long tail, very specific, like when they search for this, they are for sure going to click on that because 5% is across the industry is an extremely high bar we have to cross. We have to hurdle over. So, we've worked with other nonprofits that just could not meet that threshold. You have some really nifty, offerings and services and space that is very challenging for just any other nonprofit to put up on Google. So we may find that you have this like pocket of opportunity that just other nonprofits can't tap into. So
great.
We don't want to be too Pollyanna about it or overly optimistic. But we're going to do everything we can to get you that full 10K.
Well, that's ending on a high note.
And before we wrap this up, Jenna, I look to you. Is there anything else that you want to talk about just in terms of logistics before we think about episode 2 of this segment?
I don't think so.
Okay. I just wanted to put a bow on this whole thing. Besides the opportunity for you to get that 10K of complimentary money from Google to support your nonprofit, this can really inform your PPC, your pay-per-click campaign in Google, can really inform how you look at SEO. Mm-hmm. Here's my phone is like, oh, did you call me? I'm Google. Did you call me?
SEO.
Yes. I think this happened in our interview too.
Yeah, it did.
Well, thank you, Google. Thank you so much for listening to my conversations. Wow. They got our backs.
Just whisper to it, World Forestry Center,
We love you. So anyways, my point is like, once we determine what those keywords that get a return on ad spend, in this case, free ad spend, ideally, once we figure that out, well, now you're armed with the keywords that we need to build an organic strategy around. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's great.
So if when we're ready to transition, you're like, okay, great. Like maybe there are certain keyword phrases that do bring in revenue or donations or whatever the KPI is, but we aren't able to hit that 5% threshold. And Google says, sorry, we can't play with you anymore. At least you'll have that data to be able to turn around and start building out a really strong organic strategy.
Which is great because our current organic strategy is zero especially with keywords. As I look at our website and look at our kind of keyword searching and all of that, there's just not been anything done. So this is huge.
I think now we're just going to introduce more and more episodes with Peaceful Media because we have a very strong SEO department as well. So
wonderful.
It's an endless, perpetual episode with Peaceful Media's and Marketing for What Matters. Well, we're going to send you out. Thanks for joining us for a new double click segment here on the Marketing for What Matters podcast. We'll see you in the next segment. Peace.